Stop asking your clients and your team to fill out dumb forms. In 2026, Airtable Forms have made a lot of progress, and in this video, I'm going to show you how an Airtable form is far more advanced than you might know. So if you're ready to learn everything there is to know about Airtable Forms, stick around and let's get into it. Welcome to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Gareth and this is Gap Consulting. In this video, we're going to be taking a dive into Airtable Forms, and I'm going to be teaching you everything there is to know about these forms in 2026. But before we get into the heart of the video, I first want to invite you to join me for our Airtable crash course. This free crash course is going to teach you the basic building blocks of Airtable so that you can start unlocking the full potential of your next Airtable build. So if you want to learn more about that, sign up for free with your email at gapconsulting.io/Airtable-crash-course. And of course, I'll include links wherever you found this video. But without further ado, let's hop on into the heart of things. And we are talking about Airtable Forms. And the analogy I want to start with is if you're accustomed to a standard form software like Google Forms, think of this as like just a pen and paper, an open blank piece of paper waiting for somebody to fill out information. Airtable Forms, because they connect to your database and to information that you can already be storing in Airtable, they're like linking up with a receptionist who already has your file open. They can have the context of what you're doing and have a lot of information dynamically or automatically pre-filled into them. So let's go ahead and break down exactly how to do all of this, but first we need to cover the basics. And I'm going to start with our data layer. If you've never watched a video on this channel before, you'll know that we almost always start here because what you're building in Airtable is going to have rippling effects through anything else that you add on. So our data layer, what we care about for this is two tables. We have clients, and you can see that we've just got one client here, Acme, that links to two projects. And this link is important because we're going to lean into this. And our projects is the second table. We have two different projects with our client, Acme. So bear all of this in mind when we are getting to the point where we are entering information through our form. Now, the first thing to cover is what does an Airtable form do? And in that same breath, we have to talk about what it does not do. So what it does is create a new record in one table and one table only. Now that can be a little limiting because sometimes when we're collecting information in a form, we might want to send information to multiple tables at once. In other cases, we might want to not create new records in Airtable. We might want to just reference existing records in Airtable and kind of fill out additional information. So bear in mind whenever you're using an Airtable form, it serves this sole purpose. Create one record only, in one single table. Now that's not to say that you can't get more advanced functionality out of it. Yes, there are ways that we can take information from that form and create multiple records with it. Or we could use that one form submission to edit existing records in Airtable. This is all possible with more advanced use cases, but the generic use case, the generic utility of the Airtable form, create one record. Now that we have that concept locked down, let's imagine with our data layer, we have clients and we have projects. Let's build another form where we might be asking people information on the different projects. So we'll just call this, we'll start it from scratch and we'll call it form submissions. And go ahead and save. And I'm going to just delete all of the starting records here or starting fields. And I'm going to build two links. I want to link to projects and I want to link to clients. So let's jump in there. Here's my link to clients. I'm just going to link once. And I'm going to link similarly to projects. And again, just once for our use case. Now we might ask our form submitter to share additional information like when's the last time you spoke with this client? So maybe we have a date field here and we want them to tell us the last date and time that they communicated with the client. And in particular, we want to look at the client on a specific project. Now, we might also want to know who is performing this check-in, who is submitting the form. And this is an area where Airtable really shines because we can make it so that when people submit a form, we know exactly who they are, assuming that they're inside of our Airtable environment. So in this case, let's actually use an Airtable user field. And we're not going to notify anybody. We're just going to set this up, and we'll call this collaborator, or we could rename it to submitter. Now, in our case, I'm not really too concerned about the name of the record, the primary field here. So I'm just going to use an auto number. And I should have renamed this as well to be auto nummed. So this is going to just count up sequentially starting from 1. Now, let's imagine what we want this form to do. First and foremost, our users, when they see the form, should select the client. And then, based on the client they select, they should select the project, but they should only see the projects that the clients are connected to. So let's rewind really quickly. Remember, Acme Company, in our example, has 2 projects. But let's create another company, we'll call it Beta, and another one called Delta. Now you'll notice these don't have projects. So if I select Beta or if I select Delta in our form, we don't want to see a possible project line up because there is no active project for either of these clients. But if we select Acme, of course, we know that there are 2 projects associated there. So how do we get this first part to work? Well, the first rule is to build this in the data layer. Remember I said that in Airtable, we always start with the data layer. We have to understand what's happening here in the data before we can build interfaces, automations, or forms. So for us, we're going to say, you can pick whatever client you want. There are no rules here to what clients we will allow. But on the projects level, we only want to see projects that are related to the client that is selected in the same record. So for example, if I pick Acme here, and I know we're not in the form yet, we're going to get to that. But if I pick Acme, I want to see the Acme projects. If I pick Delta, I don't want to see any projects. But right now, I see the stuff that's associated with Acme. We have to fix that. In order to do that, we're going to set up conditional dynamic filters. This means the filter will be conditional dynamically based on what is selected in the clients. So in order to do this, we can set up to filter the record by a condition. And we can add this condition, and we can say that the client here, dynamic condition, set it to dynamic by hitting the gear. And we're going to say the client has to match the clients. What does this mean? Notice that this client is singular. There's just client without an S. Here we have clients with an S. This part right here is this client's link. This client is the client connection in the projects. Let me save this and go to there into the projects table to show you. This client right here is singular. This is the one that we're matching. So when we set up that dynamic rule here in the projects, we're saying that the client link inside of the project record has to match the clients that are selected here in this table. That can be a little bit confusing if it's your first time. Set it up a couple times and it'll start to make more and more sense. So now that we've set up that dynamic rule, take a look at what happens when I look at my projects. We have the 2 projects associated with Acme, but if I look here where we've selected Delta, I see nothing because there are no projects associated with Delta. Now you might think this is just a lot of fancy stuff at the data layer, but it really matters when it comes to building smart, intelligent forms. So let's get to that now. Now there are 2 options for your forms. We can build a form here using the forms component in Airtable, or we can build a form in an interface. Now for our particular example, I'm going to use the standard forms. These are a bit more versatile if we're sharing them in a public way, if we're embedding them, if we are putting them into some kind of a link and sharing that link so that people click it to fill out our form. These are slightly more versatile. The interfaces work very similarly, except they also require that someone is logged into Airtable, accessing our interface. We have to have given them permission or shared a link with them so that they can access that. And so generally speaking, if we're sharing forms in a more public way, we're going to use the standard forms. So let's go ahead and build it ourselves. And remember, the number one rule of forms is they create one record in one table. So first we're going to be asked, where are you putting this? What table is it associated with? Only one. For us, we built a new table, form submissions. And sure, the form name, new form submissions, that'll work for us for now. Let's create the form. Now you'll see the ability to add or remove different fields from our data layer. So if you recall, we have several different fields that we want to bring into our form. We want to bring in the client, we want to bring in the project, and the date time, as well as figuring out who it is that is submitting this information. So let's go ahead and start with bringing in more information. If we click the form here, you'll see the fields that are currently visible in the form. Right now, if we click one, we just see the date. So we want to bring in the clients and the projects, as well as the collaborator. We can reorder these things just by clicking and dragging them around. So we're going to bring clients up to the top and then projects, because our idea is that someone selects the client and then sees only the projects associated with that client. Then we've got our date, and then we've got our collaborator. Now, collaborator is a part where we don't actually want people to fill out who they are. We want this to pre-fill with the current user. And in order to do this, we can come in and say the default value here is going to be the current user. So the current user is only supported when see who submitted a response setting is enabled. You have to make sure to turn this on, and you can go to your form settings by clicking here. They're right here in the center of the page here, and we can toggle it on so that we see who submitted the response. And again, what we did here, if we go back to this field, is we're establishing the default value is whoever is logged in. If you want people to be able to edit this, keep it on here. But if you want it to be locked so that they cannot change this fact that whoever submitted it, it is who it is, then toggle off the fact that you allow users to edit the field. Pretty self-explanatory. Now, we want users to edit the clients. We want them to select clients from a drop-down of available clients. And then similarly with projects, in our data layer, we added that dynamic conditional filter. And so here, that actually gets inherited by the form. That's why we went through the work of doing it on the data layer. So if we were to select the client, Acme here, and this is just kind of the sandbox, I'm going to see the Acme projects. But if I change this and put a different client in, let's say beta, I don't see any projects. So again, we are inheriting the logic that we built at the data layer in the form. And so in this way, we want to ensure that our users always fill out clients first before they even see projects. Otherwise, they might fill out a project that doesn't associate with the client that they're going to pick. So in order to do this, we need to set up some conditional rules in the form. We only want projects to show up in our form after someone has filled out a client. In order to get this functionality, we can go into the visibility component. Click on Always Show Field, which is the setting by default, and we can add a condition here to say that, well, clients, that is this client's field right here, it has to not be empty. Somebody has to put something into clients before we want projects to show up. And then similarly, we might have a rule that says we only want to show the date field here after someone's filled out a project. So we can say projects is not empty. So this is just an example, but it's showing you how we can allow fields to show up on our form conditionally when other information is presented. Next, let's talk about beautification on the forms. We can add a cover image and add a logo here. You can play around with some different sizes here. We've played with different sizes over the years. A lot of it depends on what monitor you're working from. So for your specific case, make sure to test any cover images, any logos in whatever conditions you'll be using the form from. If you're using it from mobile device, if you're using it from a specific desktop or laptop computer, check it from those monitors so that you can make sure that you get the resolution in the images that you're looking for. We can also rename these things, and we get a little bit of control over the colors. We can show a background color to the form, although we can't really change how it shows up. It's really just this one color option, or we can toggle it off. We can also show a group title here. So if you have different components or different sections to your form, you can break them up into different groups, name each group. I can make this test group for an example here. And this allows you to have different sections of your form so that people have a better user experience when they're scrolling through and filling out information. Now, the strongest thing about Airtable Forms is that no integration to your Airtable database is required, because once you publish this form, it's live. We don't have to tell it where to put the record. It already knows, because of the fact that at the form level, we said the source of the form was the form submissions table. So all we do now is publish, and any new entry on this form is going to be recorded in our form submissions table. Now, as we're publishing the form, we're asked who we want to allow access to. Anyone on the web, anyone in an admin-approved domain, anyone at a specific domain, or only users who have base access. So this gives you a lot of control over how you're going to be sharing this form. If you really want to lock it down, make sure that it's for internal use only. You have a lot of options available for you here. Another thing to bring up with Airtable Forms is that in some cases, especially when you're allowing anyone on the web to fill them out, you might want to hide some information, and you might want to pre-fill information on the form. And you can do this by sharing a very unique URL. So once you create the actual link for the form, you can copy it here and put it in a browser so that you can see the actual form link itself. Let me pop open a new window and I'll paste that in here. This is the form URL. The first part of it, of course, is the Airtable domain. Then it tells you the app. This is the actual Airtable solution that you're building this form from. Then the page, that's this right here. And of course, /form. Now, if you want to add additional information to your form, such as pre-filling form fields and then hiding them, you can do all of that in the URL itself. I strongly advise for this that you would swing by Airtable's support documentation, because they put together extensive articles on exactly how to do this. So over here, we have the pre-filling a form via encoded URL. This is within Airtable's support documents. And you can see that you can create the pre-filled URL by grabbing that initial component that ends in /form. And then here are the different components that we can do. We can understand the different URL parameters, such as how to replicate blank space in the form. We can look at how to pre-fill a single select or multiple select field, or pre-filling time fields. There are many different elements, and so depending on what information you are trying to pre-fill, I'd suggest you come to this page and kind of grind this out. Of course, if you need some help, you can always ask AI to help you out as well in generating the pre-fill form, especially if you reference this URL at Airtable, which of course has all the support documentation. So once you've gone through the support documentation, you're going to have a longer URL than your actual form URL itself. So again, here's our starting form URL. Let's say I wanted to pre-fill my clients. I would say $prefill _ clients equals, and then I might fill it out with Delta, for example. So this particular URL is, the form is the first component. The next part is the pre-fill information. And when I go to this form, I'm going to hit enter and load the page. You're going to notice that the client is pre-filled. So in this way, you could create unique URLs for your different clients. And then with just a simple opening up of that URL, you could have information already pre-filled for that client. But I also want to highlight that, number one, it knows who I am because I'm submitting this data through the form and I'm logged into Airtable, so it knows who I am and it's going to record me as the person who submitted it. It's also noted up here that I'm in my Airtable account. I can only see the projects that are related to this particular client, but also notice that if you have a form like this, anybody can remove the information that is pre-filled, and then they will see information that is in your database. So this is a potential hiccup or fly in the ointment, because if you don't want people to have that capability, you have to then either hide that field so that no one can uncheck the client, or use a different form software. So if we're doing this internally, that's usually the best use case here. where I'm sharing this internally and people on my team already know everything in my database. So here I am, I've selected Acme. I can select the project. Only then does the date timestamp show up. Let's go ahead and pick this one. Notice that it knows who I am and I can submit. Now, in no way did I ever connect this to my Airtable database. And yet, when I go back to Airtable, we're going to see that submission has been recorded. So here it is, Acme, links to the project with the timestamp that was put in. And of course, the collaborator was filled out as well. Now, you'll also notice that we have the created by here, which is technically a better way of doing it than having the collaborator field filling out, pre-filling. I just wanted to highlight that this field is also available in the forms, but that created by works perfectly for our use case. So there's a lot you can do with Airtable Forms, but remember, if you're going for a more robust situation, like putting the information into more than one table or editing information, you're going to need an additional workaround if you're using Airtable Forms. Of course, you might also consider using third-party forms, which are slightly more advanced than the native Airtable form. The advantage here, though, as you can see, I didn't have to integrate this anywhere. It automatically filled out my information right into Airtable. I hope you got a ton of value from the video, and of course, if you did, we'd love a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. It's going to help us and also help you see more content like this. And if you have questions that we did not get to in this video, please swing by the website because we've put a ton of resources together for you. I'll share our web link wherever you found this video. But most importantly, keep on building.